Good afternoon, everyone. Happy New Year. Welcome to 2020 and welcome to the first live Facebook Q&A with me, Professor Michael Scott, and my special guest, returning guest, Katrina Kelly. The first Q&A of 2020. What a way to start. Katrina, welcome back.
Thank you very much for having me again.
As you may have guessed, we are up in Lytham St Anne's for the start of 2020 for the Lytham St Anne's Classical Association Presidential Lecture, which somebody is giving later on. I have no idea who that is.
I wonder who that could be.
And I'm here kind of with the esteemed chair of the Lytham St Anne's Classical Association, Katrina, who is as you guys will well remember, the youngest person to have ever set up a branch of the CA in the country since the start of the CA back in 1903, and is now chair and equally has the I'm lucky enough to be president of the largest CA branch in the country, where we recently welcomed Mary Beard in November time.
Yes, we did, yeah.
To come give her CA presidential lecture, and it was absolutely fabulous to have well over 700 people coming through the halls to listen to her, as well as to eat some very good cake, and I'm looking forward to some more good cake later on. So cake bakers of the Lytham St Anne's CA, if you're listening, why aren't you baking? But I can't wait to be tasting and trying the cakes out later on. So Katrina, you're going to kick us off this week with kind of responding to a quick question. But first off, we have to say a congratulations and a happy birthday. So this was a question from Annie Fitzgerald Robbins, and it's her daughter's Eleanor's 18th birthday today. Now, I don't know if that's today or when you sent in the question.
We'll go with today.
I think
today is an auspicious
Happy
day.
18th birthday to you, Eleanor. And even more importantly, you've got an offer to come to study classics with us at Warwick in September. So fantastic. We look forward to seeing you. So Annie was asking if we can wish you happy birthday, which we are more than delighted to do. And asking also whether, if and how Greeks and Romans celebrated their birthdays. It turns out that Katrina here is an expert on this very topic. Take it away.
Oh, it's a fabulous topic, definitely. I wanted to focus on Roman birthdays in particular, and I think they're really interesting because actually it's not that different from how we celebrate our birthdays now. We might think that you would have a party, maybe have some cake, and maybe give some gifts.
Very important.
Some gifts. Actually, the Romans did something very similar. So gift giving was a really important part of your birthday. But it wasn't just gift giving from one person to another. It was also giving gifts to the gods. And not just any god, but often your individual god, the individual cult of a person's genius, it was called. So to the gods you would give vota. So you would give offerings, you would give libations, incense perhaps, and also honey cakes where the cake comes in. So honey cakes therefore given to the god as part of wishing you good luck and celebration for the rest of the year round, and of giving thanks for the god's protection to you for the year.
So is it more gifts going to the gods than gifts going to you?
It seems to be that way. I don't
know how I feel about that.
I know, but it was obviously very much a two-way thing, an exchange. So it was very reciprocal, which comes into play a lot in Roman society. And so patrons and clients, who often were there to give political and social support, would give gifts and acknowledge each other on their birthdays. So we have a letter from Horace saying that his patron Mycenas, that he said that Mycenas' birthday was even holier than my own, as a sign of pure...
That sounds like sucking up to me.
It does indeed.
That kind of thing.
But,
right, okay.
yeah.
So birthdays are good opportunities to suck up. So so Annie needs to remember this. If she wants to get on Eleanor's good side for her birthday, then definite more presents for Eleanor.
Exactly.
Right? And Eleanor, equally, when it's your mum's birthday, you need to...
Yeah, the Romans took this very seriously. It was a pious religious occasion, but also a way to show family love and respect, and there often was a bit of a hierarchy going on up there amongst the family. But for Eleanor today, if you were a Roman girl, then you may have been wearing white. You may also...
On your birthday?
Yeah, white on your birthday. A floral crown, a bit like a garland.
Eleanor?
And maybe you're having a party too. We've got evidence from the tablets of Indolanda which show that Claudia Severa was inviting people to her birthday party.
Sending the letters out and around, sitting there in the middle of soggy northern, not too far from where we are right now, in fact, kind of saying like, I'm still going to have a birthday party, like even if we can't go outside. So Eleanor, if you do get dressed up in white with your nice kind of garlandy crown for your birthday, please do send a picture into the Facebook page as well, and any of you out there, if you're getting dressed up in your togas or celebrating your birthdays in Roman or indeed Greek fashion, please do send in some photos and we'll post them all. We'd love to see the photos and post them. Hello, Happy New Year to you all. Thank you so much for tuning in. Great to see you guys. And obviously, I completely, talking about giving presents away, It's actually a prize week as well, because I forgot to talk about the prizes for the questions that we've answered in the Facebook Q&As over the final months of 2019. And so I was looking through the questions here, and now this is without any kind of favouritism for starting off with Annie's question, but Annie had a question that came in a Q&A back in November, which was, in your opinion, what would make a current book a classic of the future in the way that the Iliad is today? And I think that wins the prize for the cunning question of the last months of 2019. So, Annie, even though it's not your birthday, we are going to be giving you a prize. You have won a 2020 Professor Michael Scott calendar with photos that I've taken from places around the world that I love over the last year, and now put together in a little natty desktop calendar for you to enjoy. So please get in touch and give us an address, and we will send that out to you over the next week or so. So congratulations to Annie, and congratulations to her daughter Eleanor as well for her birthday. And now we all know how to celebrate birthdays in Roman style. Did they have birthday candles?
Well, maybe for incense. Maybe they went also to the gods or the genius.
Okay, excellent work. So we are moving on swiftly, and we've got now Sarah Scotty. You have been sending in a plethora of questions that have come in, and we liked all three of them. So we're going to answer all three of them. Talk about this, which is we're just overwhelmed with excitement to be back with you in the start of 2020. This one I think is a really interesting question. If you were to get a Roman and put them in a time machine, how far through history would they get before they didn't recognise the world around them anymore? Now, I mean, I guess that's a really tough question to answer, because it would depend a lot on where your Roman was, right, in the Roman world, which part of the Mediterranean they were in, because different parts of the Mediterranean changed at very different paces, and I think became parts of different empires and different worlds at different times, and thus became more or less unrecognisable. So if we say our Roman is in Rome, how long before they wouldn't recognise the world around them? Well, I mean, you've got the split of the Roman Empire happening through the course of the 3rd and 4th centuries AD, but then by the 5th century you're in trouble. Kind of Rome is being sacked. Kind of the whole Western Roman Empire is pretty much abandoned. The Eastern Roman Empire, which gets centred around Constantinople, that will become the Byzantine Empire, continues on. So you probably still recognise the world if you were there. Yeah. But you might not expect much, kind of understand much, if you were sitting in Rome pretty quickly, I think, into the 5th and 6th centuries AD. The world really had changed quite dramatically. Being Roman didn't really mean anything anymore for you if you were sitting in the rather bombed out shell of Rome. But if you were a Roman sitting in Constantinople, then life actually would continue recognisably for an awfully long time. Some people might argue right the way through until the 15th century, kind of with the fall of Constantinople to the Ottoman Empire. So kind of in that sense, you could have a long time, or you could have a very short time, depending on where you were within the Roman world. I don't know, would that kind of make sense?
Yeah, I think also if we're thinking about Rome in particular as a place, then we have to remember that it was such a place that grew organically over time. Right. So even if if somebody went back, say, 100 years within their own time as a Roman, then suddenly the landscape around them would seem very different. Temples were being created all the time. Obviously, war and pillage and sacking did come to Rome as well. Fires, indeed. So the buildings and the landscape of Rome changed, but the daily life perhaps a little bit less so. Okay.
So perhaps you wouldn't recognise the landscape around you, but the kind of cultures and traditions you might still recognise for a little bit longer. You'd be able to plug into. And but I mean, that again kind of speaks to the fact that the Roman world, things were happening in different parts of the Roman world in very different ways. And one of the best expressions I love that we still obviously use today, which is "when in Rome, do as the Romans do," comes from the early Christian era of the Roman Empire in the 4th century, when a chap who was talking to a bishop down in Carthage in North Africa said, "Look, I'm a Christian, but then I went to Rome, and all the Christians were doing all the ceremonies in a different way from the way we do them here in Carthage." And the bishop replied, "Well, when in Rome, do as the Romans do, and when you're in Carthage, do as we do here in Carthage. So even within the Roman Empire, if you went to different parts of it, even though it would all be part of the Roman world, the traditions and ways of doing things could be substantially different and all at the same time. Sarah, great question. We're going to have to move on, otherwise we will run out of time before we even get to the vast array of great questions that you've had. Alex, although the Roman architecture would have been far more colourful than today, yes, quite right. And this is one of those things that we can never, ever, ever accept about the ancient world.
Yeah, we really struggle, don't we?
If you go to the Ashmolean Museum and you go into the cast gallery section that they have at the side, just around the corner, hidden around the corner, is a copy of the Prima Porta Augusta statue, and then next to it, a coloured version of the Prima Porta Augusta statue, as it would originally have been painted. It's
amazing, the transformation, isn't it? How you see things just so differently.
And it looks utterly garish, doesn't it? And there's
really bright colours, vivid blues and reds.
And you see people looking at it going, this is a horrible kind of ancient world nightmare that I can't take anymore. But it is absolutely true. And that was the realities of the ancient world, coloured in Technicolor, absolutely. Right, Sarah, second question. Should Greek classical stories like Medusa be rewritten for the Me Too era? I think, this is a really interesting and difficult question, because on the one hand, these kinds of stories, these myths, their whole point is that they are constantly rewritten and represented and changed over time. Right? There never was a story that was stationary that never changed.
That's the point of myth. It's a dynamic thing, isn't it? It comes in the retelling and the reperformance all the time.
So it would be really odd if Medusa wasn't actually going to be rewritten for the new era that we are in, which is affected by a whole host of things, including, of course, the Me Too movement. And you see this with, any number of tragedies and plays that are put on when they're reworking the works of Aeschylus or Sophocles or Euripides on the stage right now. It's often retold, reset, represented to speak to a particular political, social, cultural phenomena that's happening now. But on the other hand, I quite like the fact that we should continue to confront ourselves with stories that may well make us uncomfortable, that may not be as politically correct as we would want them to be, that may not be as acceptable in terms of, or as aligned with our social ideas, our ideas of legal justice, our ideas of gender equality, love. Because I think the more we confront ourselves and with the idea that different places and different times around the world have done things in extraordinarily different ways, the more we realise quite what it is that we are fighting for in our own culture, civilization, and moment and time.
And we can't change that ancient context, so I suppose we have to be aware of how they would have been viewed and told at the time, and then to see how far we've come from that and how we would tell them differently now.
Yeah. To understand that that it was a different world and it was a different time, and we shouldn't try and whitewash that ancient world.
We can't put our own cultural expectations on a different time in society.
Linda, you're saying with Medusa we could appear to POTUS. Thank you. Yes, that would be an interesting one, isn't it? Actually, one of the best moments in which I think the Medusa myth has been updated is in the Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief film, when Percy Jackson is in the garden centre, which is run by Medusa, and they're desperately trying to avoid Medusa but at the same time cut off her head because they need it. And he pulls out an iPhone iPod and uses the silver reflective back of the iPhone iPod to search for Medusa without actually looking at her face. And I thought that was genius updating in every possible way. So the thing. And Boris too. Yes, so yes, there have been a lot of politics since we last come back. Lots have changed, and I'm sure there's lots of things that we would all like to change about the way in which the direction of the world is travelling in early 2020. Maybe Medusa should be put to work for a whole series of ways. It seems that all of you agree. Actually, you'd quite like your own little personal Medusas to be able to go off and deal with people around the world. So perhaps not so much, Sarah, rewriting the classical story of Medusa, as in getting it deployed a bit more often.
Yeah, perhaps.
That might be the way forward. Final question from Sarah is, you are doing, hats off to you, veganuary, and did Roman vegans exist, and where did they get their protein from? Katrina, again, it turns out you're an expert in this as well.
Great question. I love these. Okay, so we know about some famous ancient vegetarians, not necessarily vegans. Pythagoras is a famous example. We don't necessarily have the evidence that he was a real vegetarian, but he said in his works, and many other ancient philosophers talked quite a lot about the ethical background to not eating meat, that it was bad for the soul, it was too violent. So we have those.
And that made a massive difference, didn't it? Because that meant that they wouldn't do blood animal sacrifice to the gods.
To the gods, which was a huge part of ancient life. Exactly, and Seneca was a Roman later, another philosopher, then he also was a vegetarian. But vegan, we kind of come to slightly differently. Actually, many Romans would have had quite a largely plant-based diet. Meat was very expensive, obviously it was desirable among certain circles, and fish too would be a slightly more accessible source of protein for those that couldn't afford meat. But vegan-based, so we have lots of records of Romans kind of eating lentils, beans. In fact, Apicius, who wrote a Roman cookbook, has a whole section on pulses, including all sorts of exciting recipes for lentils and beans and peas. So they were very keen on getting their protein that way, and that indeed was a staple of their diet. But for the working class, for the poor, as we kind of think of them, then often their diet consisted mostly of wheat, grains, barley, coarse porridges. On top of that, we have, so in 33 BC, Agrippa was aedile, and he gave to the people as a largesse, as a gift, a benefaction, a supply of oil, olives, and salt, all of which perfectly
good stuff.
Okay for a vegan diet, but not necessarily giving them the protein they might need. But vegetables, dried fruit, honey cakes, dates, those sorts of things. I mean, honey isn't necessarily a vegan product, but in terms of a vegetarian diet, then those things were widely consumed. In fact, it's been found recently that gladiators, mostly, against what we might think, had a very plant-based diet. They were known as the Barley Boys for having a grain-based diet.
The Barley Boys.
The Barley Boys.
Gladiators as Barley Boys. That is genius. That should be. I'm surprised we haven't seen that in the supermarkets and in the food shops as the diet for bodybuilding.
They used to have what they call plant ashes, which would be there to increase bone density and to give them strength when they were engaged in combat.
So if anyone out there is in the market for a new business, I think you should create a fitness diet regime thing called the Barley Boys, and kind of then just have pictures of Roman gladiators all over it, and I think it will sell instantaneously. Kind of absolutely. Linda's saying, sounds delicious. Julia, you are saying, did they perform operations on people in ancient Rome? Yes. Yes. Lots of them, including brain surgery. Yeah. I mean, we have skulls surviving that have got holes drilled in them where the hole is then fused back together afterwards to show that not only did they do the brain surgery, but the person survived that brain surgery and must have lived for a certain amount of time afterwards. So definitely performing operations on people, although perhaps not with modern day general anaesthetic. I suspect more... Not
a pleasant experience.
No, a large swig of something very, very strong and alcoholic, kind of like... Or Alex says, call it the Russell Crowe diet. Yeah, but did Russell Crowe? Did he have a barley diet?
Did he go barley peas and chickpeas?
Like
I'm not sure.
I'd
have to find out.
I think he's a bit too much of a wuss for that. I think you need kind of proper. I hope he's not listening. Otherwise he's going to come and beat me up, isn't he? Right. Brilliant from Veganuary. So if you are doing Veganuary, congratulations. This is kind of a good luck to you.
Yeah, many Romans did it too.
I came across the other day, someone was telling me that there is actually a brand of crisps that is beef Wellington flavoured that are actually vegan. Wow. Because there's absolutely nothing. So even if you're giving up meat for January and you do fancy at least something akin to the taste of meat, then you can grab hold of these beef Wellington crisps and not be breaking your vegan January diet at the same time. There we go. The Romans definitely did not have those. We've got time. Quick question. Andrew James from Guildford High School has been in touch. And has got a whole series of questions that have come from him and his students that are thinking about Greek religion modules that they've been working on as well. So thank you very much indeed for sending those in. We haven't got time to get through all of them, but there's a quick question I wanted to start with, which was, do we know anything about the circumstances in which votive offerings were made? For example, is it likely that there would have been a booming trade in votive offerings right outside the sanctuaries, or would people tend to bring offerings from their place of origin? How would this work? So votive offerings, what we mean by these is that when people came, particularly in the Greek world, but equally into the Roman world, to sanctuaries of the gods, one of the things they would do, if you weren't performing a sacrifice of an animal of some kind to the gods, you might bring a small offering, a thing, which you were going to dedicate to the gods, and it would then remain in the sanctuary. You'd leave it there. It would become the property of the god going forward. And that is a votive offering. And then depending on the different sanctuary you were in and the different god you were worshipping, those votive offerings could take many different forms. So sometimes certain sanctuaries and certain gods had very particular types of votive offerings that they seem to like to be offered, and sometimes it was a bit more of a kind of a free choice. And Andrew's question is, where is this stuff coming from? Right? One of the things that often gets left out of the study of Greek religion is the economics of the Greek religious kind of model and cycle of activities. Because if you have all these things you're supposed to be dedicating to the gods, somebody's got to be making those things for you. Now, sometimes you might have a personal heirloom, and in the earlier centuries, in the archaic period, for instance, we see lots of obviously things that were personal, things like little brooches, hairpins, particularly things like that you might have had as actually you had been using and you were dedicating something that was personally yours, right? But over time, we see more and more objects that have been seemingly bought expressly there to then dedicate to the gods. And so, Andrew, I think you're absolutely right that we must imagine that around sanctuaries there would have been a whole bunch of, a little bit like today, right? All the people who are trying to sell you stuff. Now they're trying to sell you stuff which is memorabilia for having your visit to the sanctuary, the cuddly toy or the small model or whatever it be. But it would do it in reverse, think that these people were all standing around the sanctuary trying to sell you things that you could take in to dedicate to the gods. So definitely stuff being made and sold directly outside the sanctuary, but equally people or states, cities might well decide to bring something from their home as well to increase the value, the fact that they travelled and brought it from further away in a long distance. And indeed, certainly if it was bigger, made of stone or marble, then many city-states in particular, i.e. people putting in the really expensive stuff into sanctuaries, would want it to be marble from their own home world. So they bring, they'd excavate the marble, maybe semi-carve it, then ship it to the sanctuary, and then potentially get some local craftsmen to finish off the carving, because you don't want to spend all your time finishing a perfectly delicate, beautiful statue and then it gets chipped, being shipped up to the sanctuary. So you finish it off kind of right there and then you dedicate it into the sanctuary afterwards. So it is a mix of both, Andrew. Thank you very much, and we'll come back to more of your questions in a little bit. We have to kind of think, Linda, who decided what the gods preferred? Excellent question. A big mix. Who decided what the gods preferred? Some of the myths that the Greeks told themselves explained what the certain gods preferred in certain cases. Other times it became a sort of emerging tradition within a particular sanctuary, which might change over time. And sometimes it's obviously led by actually the human actors themselves, who decide that certain things are cooler in certain eras to dedicate to the gods than others.
And I suppose if there's auspicious signs after dedicating such an object, then the god must like it, I'm going to have to do that.
Someone turns up with a particular shape of pot and they then get everything they asked for, you're bound to then want to shove the, right, we'll turn up with that pot, like kind of, as we go forward.
Gold dust for advertising.
Exactly, kind of, I like it, kind of a brilliant idea. So thank you guys, thank you very much. Right, very quickly, in the news, things that have been happening. So do you see this? The second only heel bone to actually show evidence of crucifixion, i.e. a nail being hammered through the heel bone, has been found in Italy, because the one before that, which is very famous and which often gets shown on TV programs, and we actually filmed with back 2011, is over in Israel, kind of to be seen. But this one's now from Italy. So an actual skeletal evidence of crucifixion, which is extremely rare, has been found. That's brilliant news. There is an Egyptian mummy in Cambridge. Did we know this? In Girton College in Cambridge, this Egyptian mummy has been sitting there since 1911 and is on show in the Lawrence Room, and is sadly, she's called Hermione. But she's not visited enough. So if you're in Cambridge and if you're near Girton College, go and see Hermione, the mummy, who's been sitting there and is a wonderful treasure.
Company.
Yeah, she does like some company. Excellent. Poor thing, so lonely. And the world's most important private collection of ancient Roman art is to go on display for the first time, including a giant marble statue of God of the Nile. There's a statue of Hercules holding a club. There's a fierce crocodile statue of, not a real one, kind of thing, and kind of some stuff all belonging to the Emperor Commodus. That and around 620 other treasures, part of the Torlonia collection that are now coming on display for the first time. So, kind of it sounds like that's going to be well worth getting to see. What's on? I mean, there's a lecture on this evening. If you happen to be in the Livingston Anns area, we're kicking off at 7 p.m. And I'm going to be talking about walking with the gods in the ancient world. And there is the rest of the fantastic lineup for the Livingston Anns Classical Association coming up.
Yes, we do. We've still got 3 more lectures for the rest of our programme. We're very excited. We've got Michael Wood coming in February, half term. Which will be fantastic. And then also we've got Professor Robin Osborne and Charlotte Higgins coming to conclude our 2020
Michael
season
Wood,
programme.
Robin Osborne, Charlotte Higgins, get up to Livingston Anns over the next couple of months. And of course you can find out the dates and details of all of those at lsaclassics.com. And then also the classics competition.
Yeah, so we also have our national classics competition open to students aged 11 to 19, and the grand final of that is held on Saturday the 7th of March. The deadline for entering is about a month before that, in February, so again check out on our website on the competition page. And this year, so it's always a speaking presentation competition, and this year we're asking students to think about which 3 characters from the ancient world they would like to invite to a party and why. So get your thinking caps on, teach your friends, tell your families, tell your kids to get involved, have a think about who you'd invite to a party, and send your video entries in to us by the start of February.
And I'm being tasked with thinking about which 3 I would invite to a party as well, so I've got to be doing a video later on, kind of giving my suggestions.
It's a tricky one.
It's a tricky one, because you've got to think about who would get on at a party as well.
Yeah, are you doing it to see which 3 people would get on or would not get on?
Ooh,
bit of a dramatic, Or is it more 3 characters that you're interested in yourself, that you would like to be there and bring together? I'd quite like to invite Homer and see how many people turned up. I think that would be quite cool.
Yeah.
We'd find out, was it one person or was it
me?
Maybe you'd have a party full of bards competing.
And then other things to let you know about. So next week on the 17th of January, if you're in the London area, I'm going to be giving a talk at the British Museum about what the Greeks did with the idea of Troy. So that's linking in with the Great Troy exhibition that they've got on at the moment. And tickets are available for that on the 17th of January. Then in Warwick on the 30th and 31st of January, do come and join us for our Ancient Drama Festival, when our undergraduates will be putting on their play. And this year it is Oedipus Rex, people! Oh my god, yeah. And so there's going to be talks beforehand on the 30th, and then on the 31st there's a whole full day of school events. Now that day I think is pretty much full now, but there are some places for the public performance and for the talks on the 30th of January as well. So please come and join us, and I hope to see you there. And then looking forward to the 19th of February, I will be also talking in London again to the Herculaneum Society about invisible Herculaneum, and that is linking in slightly with the fact that Italy's Invisible Cities, the series we did for BBC a couple of years ago, is back on TV right now on BBC4, so you can see me mucking around in Naples, Venice and Florence, kind of above and below ground along with Sandra Armstrong, and doing all sorts of weird and wonderful things in the meantime. And the Linda Montague, thank you very much for sharing this, also mentioned that on the 18th and 20th of February, it's all happening in February, isn't it?
God, busy for months.
The planetarium at Colchester Castle is happening, so you can see the constellations unfold before your eyes and learn all about Roman beliefs linked to the stars. There's craft activity tables to get creative and have plenty of fun. So that is happening on the 18th and 20th of February at Colchester Castle. So get in and enjoy that. Right, have we got any spare time? We've got like a minute. We've got a minute. Okay, Dave PJ. You didn't give us your full name, but Dave PJ, whoever you are. How do we get our young people excited about history again? Katrina, as a younger person, kind of my old age sitting over here, as the youngest person to set up a branch of the CA since 1903, how do we get our young people excited about history again?
I think there are so many ways. That's the beauty of it. It's whether you go and see that history for real. You could see reenactments. You can go to museums, go visit the real sites if you can. It's through watching documentaries, like Michael's here, listening to the radio, but it's through talking to people as well, I would say. If you have an interest, if you have a passion, or even if you're not quite sure you're at that stage yet, but you'd like to know something new about, whether it be history or classics or any part of the ancient world, it's about talking to other people and finding those like-minded people. I think as a member of a branch of a classical association, the best bit, it's not just only having fantastic speakers come and share their knowledge, but it's being amongst a community of people who also share that interest. And I've never been to certain places. They've been on holiday recently, they visited a site, they come back, they tell us all, we share photos, and really gaining from just other people's interest and experience. But there are so many great technologies as well today that we can use to access history. I was only looking yesterday at someone and done some amazing work with Greek pots, with Greek vases, but has animated them and brought them to life. So you can revisit a Greek symposium, and you can go and you can see exactly not just what the drinking experience was like, or how these vases existed and worked and how they were made, but also see how the artists work and what the imagery, the myth behind them actually was as well. So that's fantastic. There are all sorts of different podcasts, technology available.
So definitely the technology, I would completely agree with both those. The technology, the finding the community, the group, and I think the most important thing for history, in terms of the way we teach it and the way we communicate it, is that it can't just be one damn thing after another, kind of one event after another. It can't be that kind of dry chronologies of history, which seemingly is so remote and unconnected to the modern world. You have to make history the story of people, the story of people who are just like you and I, who haven't changed that much in 2,500 years or whatever period of history we want to talk about, who are having to face up and make decisions in the face of often kind of difficult dilemmas, difficult situations, have the same priorities, needs, interests as we do today. And I think making people see history as if they are living it and having to make those decisions for themselves, and thus sympathise and empathise with the people who had to do it in the past, is not only a good way of making history more interesting, but it's also a good way of making history more valuable to those people going forward in their own lives, who are undoubtedly going to themselves face difficult decisions and dilemmas. Hopefully they won't be facing Medusa at any point in time, not a real Medusa in any way, although we all know some people that we'd like to describe as a Medusa from time to time. But yeah, it's that then that makes history, I think, a useful sidekick as people go forward and get ready to kind of go forward in their own lives doing whatever they're going to do. So Dave, PJ, thank you very much for your question indeed. And we're out of time. We're over time. Thank you so much for staying with us. Thank you very much indeed. We're wishing you good luck for tonight. Thank you very much indeed. We're going to have great fun. If you are in the Lytham area, come and join us. The cake is amazing. The talk will be okay. But the people you can meet are absolutely superb as well. So everyone, it's going to be great. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you had a wonderful Christmas and a great New Year. Good luck with whatever you might be doing in January, whether it's dry January or veganuary or whatever it might be. Good luck with the start of the new year. I hope it starts well with you, bright and full of cheer. And we will be back next time on the 30th of January. So a couple of weeks, sadly because of term stuff that's getting in the way at Warwick, I'm not going to be able to do a Q&A for the next couple of Thursdays, but Thursday the 30th of January I will be back. Sadly not with Katrina, who's back doing her own work at Bryanston School, looking after the next generation of young minds and teaching them and keeping them out of mischief, sort of. But I will be there on the 30th of January and look forward to taking your questions. So please do send in your questions as always. You can do that through the new Facebook page. Please tell everyone, transfer over the new Facebook page, facebook.com/ProfMichaelScott, or send them in via email to michaelscottacademic@gmail.com, and we will look forward to answering them then. Take care everyone. Goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
There we go. Have a great evening. Take care guys.